single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way. Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
Hey there, Cerise here. Welcome to Storytime from Sosua Shores. Guys, this story was sent to me from a gentleman. At this moment, he is 50 years old. When this story started, he was 16 years old. So, when he was 16, he was raised in an area outside of Sosua where there were no foreigners. Okay. So the first time he saw a foreigner, he was 16 years old. He fell in love with an international school teacher. She was visiting here in the Dominican Republic, and she was 30 years older than him. Okay? So you could just imagine. She's 46 and 30 years older than him. He's 16. She was not interested in him at all, but he was interested in her. And he kept going to her house every day to see what she needed done in her yard, to see if she, if she could teach him English, if she could teach him anything at all. And he would go there every day. Now, of course, her being 46, she was smart and she knew that he had a little crush on her. So she didn't want to encourage it. He was 16 years old. Some of you that are listening to this story that are 18, 17 yourself, you may think you can handle a person that's a little older. You may think that you can handle a person that is a cougar, but really it takes a lot of maturity. It's not about intimacy. I'm pretty sure a younger man could please a woman of any age. But for women, once they get into their 40s, it's not about that any longer necessarily. It's more about a connection of the mind. And so there was no connection of the mind for her and this 16-year-old. Let's give him a name and let's give her a name. We're going to name her, let's name her Heather. That's my mom's name, actually. And we're going to name him, we'll name him Kirk. Okay, so we have Heather and we have Kirk. Kirk is my uncle's name. So on my dad's side. So we have Heather and Kirk. Now, Heather is 30 years older than Kirk. Kirk is a natural born Dominican. And he is really a different kind of kid. He was always focused on books, focused on learning. People always told him from when he was a young age that he was an old soul and that he was a professor. A lot of people, just as a joke in his neighborhood, would call him maestro. Maestro is teacher, and maestro was his nickname, but people used to call him Professor. Just cute names for him when he was a young kid because he was always so smart. Now that didn't do anything for Heather. Heather was an older woman. She was there to teach the children of the neighborhood and also help with certain programs. And so this was many, many years ago, before a lot of foreigners used to come. Now, this did not take place in Sosua immediately. This was way out in one of the other areas in the campo. So eventually she started to accept to teach him. Like at first she didn't want to teach him anything. She felt like, okay, this is a kid with a crush, and she didn't want a kid being there all the time and rumors flying. So she would always say no to him. But eventually he got to her and he said to her, listen, if you can teach me studies even on the front step, not where you teach the other kids in the back area, because she used to teach young school kids all the time. And he said, even if you can teach me in the front yard where everyone sees. And he said to her, I understand why you don't want to teach me alone in the house. And he showed me pictures of himself when he was 16 years old, 17 years old, 18 years old, and he did look a little bit older. He already had a mustache and a beard, and he tried to make himself look older once he fell in love with her as well. So, it's morning, guys. I'm drinking my Santo Domingo coffee. So now, she decided that she was going to start teaching him. Okay, so she said, you know what, kid, you really want to learn that much? You really want to? All right, I'll teach you on the front step. So she started to teach him on the front step. And nobody said any rumors at all. It was just natural for him to learn from the foreigner. And people could see that he was always helping her. He was always helping her with her lawn, helping her with her yard work, and he was never going into her house. He always kept it very respectful, and she as well. Until one day, when he was 22 years old, his mom died. Now, his mom had him when she was at a mature age. She was in a mature state in her life. Her mom had him when she was 45 years old. Now, that could be one of the reasons why he was also very mature. Sometimes when a child is born to a parent that is mature in age, that child tends to learn a lot about the arts and tends to be a little bit more mature than the average kid. Now, that's not always, but in most cases, especially if the child is an only child born to an older set of parents or older parent, sometimes they have more of a quiet, peaceful lifestyle. And they're not rushing around everywhere. When his mom had him, he said to me that she was a very calm woman and she took care of him very well. She was older when she had him, so the whole community helped to take care of him. And her nieces and nephews became more like his parents. So he had his cousins help raise him. He said that the whole community loved him. He was a very well-loved boy. He wasn't looking for a mother figure. But when he was young, his mom died. And that's when the family asked that woman to take him in. Now, the woman felt very uncomfortable taking him in because his love for her, or his desire for her, lust for her, no matter what she was considering it at that time, it did not go away at all. And it made her feel uncomfortable that he was so young. Because now, at this point, she was she was 50, pretty much. And so she said to them that, maybe she can help pay for him to get an apartment somewhere on his own. And they were so thrilled with that. They said, thank you so much. And she did. She got him a little place. And the reason why the family asked for him to stay with her was because he was going through school and they didn't have a lot of money for him. And also, they wanted to make sure that he was fed right and that he had the transportation that he needed. And also, they didn't have the space for him as a grown man. Most of them had, they had families of their own, young girls and everything, and he was a grown man. So when the woman offered to pay his rent, he took it very offensively. He said to her, why can't I just stay with you? I'll stay in the spare room. It shouldn't be a problem, but she wasn't having it. So she had him stay in his own place. That was respectful. For her, that was a good decision, and I agree with her. Now, fast forward 5 years, she's paying his rent, he's going to school, he finishes school. Now, during those years, he doesn't date anyone. He doesn't have a relationship. He's at her house every single day after school. He does all his studies at her school, at her place. And everyone assumes at this point that they are together. Everyone assumes because now he goes into her house, and there's nights where he'll leave very late. And then there's nights that he wouldn't leave at all because he'd end up falling asleep at her kitchen table studying, and she would just let him sleep on the couch. There was absolutely nothing romantic with the two of them. But the community started to think that because they seemed like an inseparable couple. Even though she was 30 years older than him, it was quite common, even then, for foreigners to come here and get with younger people, and also Dominicans as well. And people that just come, it's not something that's taboo to date someone that's younger than you by a few years as well. So no one said anything to them. One day, she was on her way to the grocery store, and one of the kids in the community walked up to her and asked her if she has any older friends for him. Now, this was a younger kid, and she asked him, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, Kirk is your boyfriend. He's lucky to have you. You take good care of him. You pay for his rent, you pay for his school, you pay for his clothes, you feed him all the time, and she felt quite nasty, quite dirty. That's what Kirk called it. She didn't even get to the grocery store. She turned right back around and she told Kirk that he would have to leave. There's no more sleeping over, and that he cannot stay any late nights again. And she was so embarrassed that she moved shortly after that, and she came here to Sosua. Now, when she came to Sosua, Sosua was very, very, very young. Well, not very, 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 but it was much younger. And it was very easy to buy a piece of land and build on it. And so she bought a piece of land somewhere up near Los Cerros. Los Cerros is across the street from Caribe Tours. If you know where Caribe Tours is, for those of you who have been here to Sosua, Caribe Tours, straight across from it, is a pescaderia. Not a pescaderia. It's a place where you can get fish. Well, it is where you can buy raw fish, so it is kind of like a pescaderia slash pescador. It's a fish restaurant where you can buy raw fish and take it home, or they cook it for you on the spot. Really great place. When you do come to Sosua, you want to check it out. They don't only sell fish, but they also sell plato del dia, so you can get rice. But it is a seafood restaurant. Very, very great. You can get shrimp, you can get conch, you can get all kinds of great stuff there. So make sure you check it out. Great prices, fresh food, good service, fast service, and also great owners. Tell them I sent you. And just remind them about the video that I did for them. So anyway, I digress, sorry. So Los Cerros is up behind that restaurant. And also there's a second part of it across the street from De Lancer. De Lancer is the internet place here, one of them. And so there was a house there was land that she built, and she had a beautiful house built there for her. And she thought, you know what, she wanted to retire. She was getting older now. Not old, obviously, in her 50s. But she was tired of teaching children, and she just wanted to retire on her own. She was a wealthy woman, and she came from Canada. And she was single. Now, her story was she was married at one time, and her husband and her daughter died in a fire. When she lost her husband and her daughter in the fire, she took the life insurance and she moved here to the Dominican Republic. And she never wanted to replace her husband and her daughter again. But she was pretty much living on an early pension as well, an early leave from work due to her circumstances. And she was just staying here and never ever dated or ever had any romance with another man. So once she moved here, they stayed in touch, and he called her on her home phone, and he said to her that he needed her to come and get him. He was somewhere. He said he was in a store somewhere. He didn't have a home phone in his house, but he called her somehow, and he said he needed her to go and get him. He needed to see her. He said he was so sick he couldn't even live another day without seeing her. She wasn't gone for very long. And at that point, she said to him, "Okay, come." And he went to see her, and he never left. They became lovers that night, and he doesn't know what made her say yes finally. He thinks that she realized that she loved him as well. She probably realized once she got here to Los Cerros that she was lonely without him. Maybe she thought, hey, he's always been a good guy, never had a girlfriend. Same thing with him, never had a woman. He was a virgin, never was intimate with any other women at all. So the two of them, when he showed up that night, he cried. He told me that as soon as he got there, he said he got there through by a car. She sent a car for him, and he got there via a car. And as soon as the car pulled up to her house, he couldn't believe the house that she built for herself. He was so proud of her. And he wasn't planning on staying there forever. He said he was just planning on staying there at least for the night if she allowed him to, because he didn't know that she was going to accept him and receive him the way she did. Now, he said that as soon as he opened the door, he cried, and all he did was just close the door, and he fell to the floor, and he cried, and he cried, and he cried. And he said, "Please never leave me." And he said she picked him up, grabbed him, and like she grabbed him by his arm and pulled him up to her, and he was taller than her, and he hugged her, and they kissed for the first time. And he said when she kissed him, she was so shy and so embarrassed, and she felt so ashamed. But he said to her, "Please, nobody ever has to know, just you and me. That's it. Nobody needs to know that we are lovers." And she said, "But everyone already thinks that we are. Everyone thinks I was with you since you were 16 years old. I'm so ashamed." And he said, "Nobody cares. Everyone can see that we were respectful with our love." And she said, "What do you mean by that, respectful with our love?" And he said, "You loved me all this time, and you just didn't know it. You fought it. You just didn't want it because you allowed age to dictate the feelings inside you. And nobody else was against it. Nobody else felt it was bad." And she said, "Yes, but it was so horrible for them to think that all that time." And I get where she's coming from. You ladies, you men, anyone would get where she's coming from. He was 16 years old. She was 46. She was 30 years older than him. You know? Wait. Yeah, 30 years older than him. Sorry, I had to do the math there. I'm like, no, wait, 26 to 46 is 20 years. I'm thinking, what? Was she 40 years older than him? But in any case, yeah, so she's 30 years older than him. Come on. That is a far jump. When you're in your 40s, you don't want to be with a 16-year-old. Not at all. That's a kid. Especially when she lost her daughter. Her daughter was very young, come on. Her daughter was 16 when she lost her daughter. So, that had to play with the mind as well. And so at the end of the day, he was really looking for love, not a mother. And he wanted someone to hold him. He wanted someone to be with him. He wanted someone to share, educate him. He wanted to educate someone else. He loved the way those two would read a book together and fall asleep, even before she moved to Sosua. When she lived in the other place, the two of them would sit on her couch and they would just read a book. She didn't have a TV. She didn't have anything like that. And they would just read a book. They would make tea from her backyard trees, like herbal tea, and they would play some Mozart in the background. She loved a lot of classical music, and she taught him the arts. She taught him about a lot about her type of music. His mom already gave him a lot on the arts around the world. His mom taught him a lot. His mom was an intellectual as well. Not only did she have him at an older age, she was also not a person who was uneducated. She was very well educated, his mother. So, he yearned for that type of food for his brain. He yearned for knowledge. He hungered for education and for philosophy, psychology. And this woman, Heather, really had it all. And she just couldn't get over the age factor and the insecurity. But once he was in Los Cerros, once he was in her new big home and they were secluded up in the mountainside, things changed for the best. She started to open up in a way that she had never opened up even to her husband. She started to love Kirk in a way that she found the youth within herself again, and a part of her youth that she never ever really captured. They would go to the river together. They would go to the beach together. She stopped caring about what other people thought. And one day they were walking down the beach and she could see how he would look at the older men hold the hands of the younger girls, and the ratio of the older men with the younger girls, and he would say to her sometimes, "Why don't you hold my hand? Why don't you let me hold your hand? How come you don't let me give you love outside? You're my woman. I love you. You know how long I loved you for?" And now at this point, they were going strong. If you include the the um, the 16, when he was from 16, 20 years. They were together at this point for 20 years. If you're including this from when he was 16 years old, right? That's where he includes it from, because that's when they fell in love. And he says she fell in love with him when he was 16 years old, and he knows it. And she actually started to admit it afterwards. But she said she was very attracted to him, but she just felt like it was completely inappropriate. But she was not sexually attracted to him. She was mentally attracted to the fact that he was such a mature guy, but also in the mind. So he says that when he was 36, she still wasn't holding his hand going down the beach. And one day, she did. He said one day on his birthday, they were going down the beach, walking down the beach and just taking their daily walk. They had their dogs. They never had children, obviously. He never had children either. He sacrificed to having children. He never wanted children, he said. So they went down the beach and they were just enjoying each other, and she grabbed his hand. And she said, "I love you, happy birthday." And never again did they ever walk down the beach without holding hands. And that, it just took a lot out of her to be able to do it, but finally she was ready. And he said that's how she was. She was very conscious of the things she did and of the decisions that she made. She wanted to make sure timing was impeccable with everything, even when it came to her will. She finally left everything to him. She said to him one day, they were sitting at her table that she used to like to write at. She was also a writer. And she said to him, "I'm leaving you everything. Everything that is mine will be yours. I want you to have even my hair clips. You can give them away to who you choose." Now, he didn't have any siblings, but he did have older cousins. And he had people who were his family members. But he didn't want anyone to have anything of hers because he was sad. He was sad to lose her, and he wanted to keep everything of hers. And she said to him, My family will fight you. So I'm giving you a copy of my will and will never ever change it. This is my will. This is my dying will for you. And she said she will be flying down her lawyer from Canada and to meet him so her lawyer can get to know him and trust him and know that he's not what we call these days a sankey-panky, gigolo. So the lawyer did come down. The lawyer came down with his wife, and they stayed at the villa up in Los Cerros. They totally loved Kirk, and they could see that Kirk was honest and that he adored the ground that Heather walked on. And likewise, they saw how relaxed Heather was and how peaceful she was and how relaxed her energy seemed. Now, this lawyer was someone who was watching her money for her, because when her husband and her daughter died in the fire, it was due to the building codes and everything. So she sued them and she made away with a lot of money. Everything was going to be given to Kirk. He cried when the lawyer was there. He took the lawyer aside and he said it's a very uncomfortable situation for him to even talk about money and stuff after she dies. And he cried to me too, as him and I spoke on video WhatsApp. I wasn't even expecting to speak to him about his story on video WhatsApp because I'm so busy these days, and it's difficult for me to talk to you guys through audio. That's why I ask you to leave your stories through voice note on WhatsApp. And but it just so happened that I had to speak to him about another situation, a business situation. He's also a landlord here. He has a lot of apartments here that I will be working with him to get you guys apartments when you guys come. And now that the borders are opening up, him and I ended up getting into a conversation, and he said, Cerise, I watch your channel. And he said, I watch all the channels here. And I watch them because I like to see what a lot of people are saying about my country. And he said, I laughed one day when on one of your videos you said that. You said Dominicans listen to all of your channels, all you vloggers, because we want to see what you guys are saying about our country and our people. We're very patriotic. And he said, I love your channel and how positive you are. And I want to work with you. And I have a story for you. And that's how this unfolded. So that was during video chat when we were just talking about business and apartments for you guys. And that's when he said, Cerise, I have a story for you, And so he said that he was, and when he told me the story, he cried. And he loves Heather very much. So after that meeting and everything, Heather did take sick many years later. But so they were together in total for 35 years. 35 years. Now, he's telling me now that he's in his 50s. Could you imagine? For that many years, they ended up being together. If you count it from age 16. Okay, 35 years. Then she passed on. She passed on of cancer. She decided to stay here and die here. Her grave is here. She's buried in the Dominican Republic. And now, she died a few years ago. Her family came down here to fight him and take everything of hers. When they saw that they couldn't take the money in Canada and that everything was transferred over to him, everything, they were shocked. They didn't even know that she died when she died. He never met any of her family in the 35 years they were together. Ever met her family. Could you imagine? They never contacted her, never came down here, and now she dies? They don't get any of that money. They didn't even know she died at first. And then it was told to them, and then they tried to get the money and they couldn't. So then they came down here. Once he was already already had the money and everything, they found out who he was. They came down here and tried to take from him what was his. Now he took care of Heather and she took care of him for that long. You know, they loved each other. They still do love each other. For that long, he loved her and never loved another, never cheated on her, always kissed her hand, always rubbed her. Even, he said, even every wrinkle he kissed, every wrinkle, like she didn't like her wrinkles, and she used to say to them, can you iron them out for me, which meant she wanted a face massage, or a neck massage or whatever. And he said that he would get coconut oil and massage her face and rub her forehead. And he says that he took such good care of her from head to toe. She was hardly wrinkled. Her feet were always soft like a baby. He said he took care of her. He never worked, ever worked. She wanted him home. And right now, he doesn't have to work for the rest of his life. He's never had a job in his life. And he says that's one thing that, he feels she felt guilty about. She always used to say to him that she stole his youth. But he doesn't feel like she stole his youth. He feels like she empowered his life, because now that he is 50, he has a brand new life. He met a brand new woman. Oh, by the way, when the family came down here, they wasted their money on a trip that was like fruitless for them. They were given nothing at all. And because they were so disconnected from her for 35 years, and they never ever spoke to her. Even after she lost her husband and her daughter, they never ever looked out for her, never ever contacted her, like Heather, to see how she was doing, ever. He didn't give them a cent at all. And she told them that her family was going to come for him and that she was going to protect him. And he knew what was going to happen, and she prepared him. So now, fast forward, he's met someone new, and this woman reminds him a lot of a younger Heather. Heather, when she was younger than when he met her. He's not replacing Heather with this woman, he says, but this woman is an intellectual. This woman loves being here, like in Sosua. She doesn't go out. She doesn't leave the villa much. She's a very, very young woman, and she's native Dominican. She comes from the countryside. He met her at the grocery store. She was at the grocery store, and she was helping someone with their carts. And he looked at her and he said, do I know you from somewhere? And she said, no, I don't think so. He said, yes, I do know you. She said, no, I don't think I've seen you before, but you do look familiar. And she's like, wait a minute. I think I do know you. And they still haven't figured out where they know each other from. But they laugh at it because they think it was just fate. He feels like it's his turn now to be Heather and for him to embrace a younger woman. He understands what it's like to walk down the street with a younger woman. He understands how Heather feels now, because he says in the beginning, when he would walk down the street or drive in his car or be on his bike with the younger woman and younger men would look at her, he would feel kind of dirty. He would feel like, oh, look what he's doing. He's stealing her youth. But she promises him that she's not feeling like her youth is being taken away. She promises him that she feels like her life is being empowered, and he feels the same. He loves the fact that she is that way with him. Now, she wants a baby, and he can give her one, because he's never had any children and he's in his 50s and he feels like he can still have one. He's still young, has a lot of youth to him, and she's young enough to have a child. So he never ever wanted any children, but now he's considering it. And his story right now is just beginning again. So he wanted me to tell you guys out there, you men out there that come here for young women, a lot of them are playing games. But he says, you know what, there are some of them out there that are very mature and that would be willing to be honored to be your wife and live happily ever after with you. He says he got a good one. He doesn't know how he got a good one now, but he knows he got a good one. And he suggests to you guys that if you're looking for someone in Sosua, make sure that you meet her family. Make sure you see what family she comes from. If her family doesn't come from Sosua, ask her to take you to her family, no matter where her family is. Get inside her brain if you are looking for a long-term relationship. But if you're looking for just having fun and, he says, shake it and break it, then you just got to go and find your fun in Sosua. But he says, if you are interested in a long-term relationship, then it's better for you to leave and meet a woman somewhere else. He says he struck it lucky because he met this woman in Sosua. He was at the grocery store. Oh, I think I told you that. Yes, he was at the grocery store and he saw her helping someone. She had just arrived in Sosua the week before, and she came here to help her aunt. Her aunt had just had a baby. So she came here from the countryside to help her aunt, and she was also looking for work. She doesn't have to work now for the rest of her life because Heather has provided for him, Kirk, and also, sorry about that, airplane mode, for Kirk and also for this new woman that's in his life. They have properties that he has built, and Heather told him to build properties and rent them out as Airbnbs because that became popular just before her death. And he said to her that he'll do whatever she wants, and so she asked him, please do that. She purchased some more land in Sosua just to make sure that he had some property to build on, and he did just that. Now he owns a restaurant. Well, he owns land that a restaurant is built on because that used to be Heather's. And I won't say the restaurant's name, but the restaurant, if the owners listen to this story, they'll know exactly who I'm talking about. It's a popular restaurant to a lot of you foreigners that come here, visitors and stuff, expats as well. It's more of an expat restaurant. And he owns the land that it's built on. He owns the restaurant as well, but he doesn't run the restaurant. He just owns the building. He owns another building here, but I really can't say the name of it. He has a lot of properties by the beach, and he's doing very well for himself. And he says that he wants to hand the money on to someone else. He wants to be able to, and he has some investments in Canada as well that she had. So, and the two of them went to Canada together before. He's been to Canada. He told me he's been to Canada many times, and his English is very good. He speaks very good English. He speaks 4 languages. He speaks Spanish, he speaks English, he speaks French, and he also speaks Creole. So he knows what he's doing. This guy's a pretty smart dude, and he has a lot of American friends, a lot of American guy friends that he met here over the years, a lot of German friends, a lot of Italian friends, a lot of Canadian friends, and he says that he just keeps it real with everyone. A lot of people know him. He's very well known here, and he's very helpful. I'm really excited to help you guys get into a lot of his places when you come down here. His places are the higher end places, and they're nicely furnished and stuff of that nature. But he is also a writer, and he is looking to publish his book soon. So he said that when his book is published, you will hear this story again and many other stories that he has experienced here with Heather. He is going to dedicate a book to Heather, and more like her memoirs that she's never ever wrote, but he's or published. But he found a lot of her writings as well after she died, and like in a what he calls a treasure box. But she used to just like write little notes on pieces of paper, on pieces of scrap paper, and she would throw them in the box, and she called it the scrap box, but he called it the treasure box. So that was kind of cute, you know. And now he's taken all those pieces of treasure and he's creating a book for her. And that's quite, oh, I think that's just so sweet. But at the end of the day, you know, this is one of these stories where, you know, you have an older couple 30 years apart and they made it work till death do them part. And they made it work without any controversy, without any trifling, without any cheating, without any stealing, without any lying. And he was a very well-raised Dominican young man, very well educated with the arts and with music and writing, everything. And his mom, I'm sure, would be very proud of him right now. This man's going to be living two lives. One life with Heather, he helped her live her life. She lived two lives after she lost her husband and her daughter. She was able to reestablish a beautiful lifestyle here in the tropical island and north coast of the Dominican Republic with a wonderful, loyal man to spend the rest of her days. And then she was able to contribute back to him for giving her life, and now he's able to contribute, and now that wealth will be left for his children's children's children. And that is all about love. Guys, I'm so happy that I could bring this story to you, and I'll be even happier when I can help you guys get settled into one of his apartments. Thank you so much for joining me. This is a happy ending, and I'll make sure I keep you updated when his book comes out. If you have a story, you can send it to me at 829-702-7726. And I'd like to thank you for listening, subscribing, and also for watching. Don't forget to hit that bell beside the subscribe button, and you will get notified with all my newly updated videos. Alrighty, guys, have yourself a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening. Big blesses.
Every single day